Hi, everybody, and welcome to tonight's crisis prevention class. My name is Regan Mason. I am a kindergarten teacher here in the district. Just a little background about me. I've been a special education teacher here in Fort Collins for 13 years, and I've also had the opportunity to teach third and fourth grade. This is my first year in kindergarten, so I'm excited for that opportunity. I just want to say thank you all for being here. I know you all worked a very long day. Um, we have here special education teachers, we have paraprofessionals, and we also have itinerants here with us too, and also principals. So different people from different experiences, different populations that they work with. And I just want to say that I really appreciate all the hard work that you do. I'll try and keep things moving along as fast as I can, and to make sure that I value your time, and hopefully able to end a little early tonight to get you home. So one of the most important things that we talk about in our crisis prevention classes is the integrated experience. And that's really the concept that behavior influences behavior. Um, if we think of an example, um, we have a child, your student, getting off the bus, and you can tell that they're in a really bad mood already, first thing in the morning. Frown on their face, head down, short answers when you ask them how they are. Um, that's a pretty clear indicator that they're not having a good start to their day. Um, we know that through the integrated experience, our attitude and our approach can change everything. With a positive attitude and with encouraging words, we can hopefully help to turn that student's day around. Um, but on the other side of that, we also know that we've had those days when that same student gets off the bus, excuse me, um, in a bad mood, having a rough day for whatever reason, and we can let that get to us, and we can say, "Oh, great, it's going to be a long day because this student is already in a bad mood, and that can cause us to be in a bad mood as well." And then everyone's in a bad mood, and it's just a negative situation all around. So we just want to remember and remind ourselves that our approach can change everything. Um, Behavior influences behavior, and that's the concept of the integrated experience. Um, there are also a lot of things that we want to think about, that are factors that are outside of our control, and these are things that can influence behavior. Um, they can be positive or they can be negative. Sometimes we focus too much on the factors that can influence negative behavior. Those There can be a lot of different examples for those, but if you think about things that influence your students' behavior that are outside of your control. Sometimes we use a picture of an iceberg, for example, because what we know about icebergs is that there's really only, they might seem large, but there's really only a little bit on the top of the whole thing that we can see, when in reality most of it is underneath the water. And that's just a good example for us to use, and to remember when thinking about the attitudes of our and of the things outside of our control. There's a lot more under the surface. Um, there can be a lot of factors that influence our students' behavior that is outside of our control. Some of those things might be things that are going on at home. That's probably the biggest factor. Um, we can, if it's a negative home situation that we know about, obviously we want to try and do as much as we can to offer resources and offer support for the family. Um, but in the end, it is outside of our control because it's something that takes place at home. Um, some of those factors could be, past trauma that a student has. Maybe just a rough home life that they're currently living in, that can influence their behavior. Um, Other factors that can influence behavior could be medication that the student's on, or maybe lack of medication that the student's on. Maybe it's something that would benefit them. As we know, a lot of our students are on different medications. Um, Other factors could be, let's see, um, lack of sleep, family stress. All these things are things to consider when we're thinking about um, things that influence our students' behavior that we don't have control over. What we do have control over is our own behavior and our own attitudes and approaches. It's also important to remember that all the things that we just listed um, for as being factors that influence our students' behaviors. A lot of those things, in fact, most of them, would influence our behavior as well. If you think about things that cause you stress and that can influence your behavior, we could probably check off a lot of things on that list that we made for our students. Family stress, possibly medication, lack of sleep, um, financial problems. All these things, even us as adults, can influence our behavior. And so it's something that we really need to consider that in the end, behavior is behavior. And we all have a point where we can get into a crisis situation emotionally. So something that we really need to make sure that we remember and that we're patient with our students. Another thing that we want to talk about is the concept of rational detachment. And that's being able to recognize our own behavior and to not take things personally. Um, it's, it's a really important concept to remember because a lot of us deal with some pretty significant behaviors and behaviors that can be kind of scary sometimes. If you've ever had a student scream in your face or throw a chair across the room, that can be something that can be even really traumatizing to us as adults. It's important to take a step back and realize that we use the phrase, it's not about you. So that's an important thing to tell yourself when dealing and working with students who are going through a rough time, who find themselves in a crisis, who are showing some pretty strong behaviors that can be dangerous. It's important to take a step back and say it's not about you, because a lot of the times those factors that we talked about earlier, those are what really are the cause of those behaviors. So that's just something to think about and to tell yourself. We use the example of when you get on an airplane, for example, they tell you to put on your air mask first before you help out the child that you're traveling with. That just goes to show that you need to be at your best before you can offer any help to someone else. So it's just an example that we use because it shows that you need to take care of yourself and not take things personally in order to give your best to your students. In this field, in this profession, there's a pretty high burnout rate, as you guys know. And so it's important to know that if you take everything personal, you won't last long. There's a lot of people who only work in our field for 3, maybe 5 years before it's just too much. And I think probably in a lot of those situations, just dealing with the stress of some significant behaviors that we can see on a daily basis, those can really get to a person, and they can cause just enough stress to say, it's just not worth it. I'm going to find something else to do that doesn't cause me so much stress. A lot of you have had some applied behavioral analysis training or ABA training. And in that, I think the biggest thing that I take away from those trainings is, even though we want our students to be responsible for their own behavior and their own actions, it's really important to remember that at some point in that student's possibly in a lot of cases young life or very young life, that behavior has been influenced and has been reinforced at some point in their life. That's usually at home. We see that a lot, but at the same time, we're not in their parents' shoes. We're not in their situation. So I always encourage staff to never judge parents and caregivers, because again, we're not in their shoes, and we don't know what it's like to experience those significant behaviors that we might see at school on an everyday basis in our home. That really is a game changer there. And so it's important to know that really that student is just trying to get their needs met. We talk a lot about the function of behavior. So we really want to say, what is this child trying to get accomplished, or what is this child trying to get out of by exhibiting this behavior? Odds are that it's something that they've learned that works for them and has worked in the past. So if lying on the floor, kicking and screaming gets their needs met at home, it makes sense that they're going to try that at school. If mom or dad asks them to do something or put something away or maybe stop doing something, and they can and they throw something or get really upset, and they get out of that task that they're being asked to do, it makes sense that they would try that at school also. And that's just our job to be patient and realize that this is really responding appropriately and handling tough situations is a skill that has to be learned. Just like an academic subject, we would want to be patient with them. If they were learning a particular math skill, for example, it's just something that they haven't mastered yet. And so again, we want to be patient, supportive, consistent with parents at home, making sure that we're all on the same page and working towards accomplishing the goal of being able to help that student really regulate their own behavior and really stay out of that crisis mode that can cause them to cause them a lot of stress. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, everybody, and we will see you back here soon. Thanks.